Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Crist. To my left or right is Frank Fear. Down below us, Mickey Plumley. And we welcome you into the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. We think we have another great show for you. We've all been looking forward to this. And Frank, I think that, these guests we get just keep getting better and better and better. And this is a good one tonight.
Yeah, one of the great things about this show is we get a chance to meet people otherwise we wouldn't. And right. I followed Joe's career. He was at two of the places I was at, obviously West Virginia, played there and coached there under Bobby Bowden and Frank Cignetti Jr. And then when I went to Michigan State, he was the offensive coordinator under Muddy Waters. So, and then, of course, the relationship with Nick Saban. So we're going to learn a lot about football tonight and about Joe. He's one of the best minds in the game.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Looking so forward to it. And Mickey, I know you coming in here, I know you'll have plenty of questions for Joe, but before we get to that, you made a nice trip today from Atlanta all the way up to Fayetteville. And it's quite an adventure from what we understand. So we want to hear about that before we get started.
Yeah, it certainly was, Greg. I tell you, I left Atlanta at 8 a.m. this morning, and I just arrived at some lifelong friends' home here in Fayetteville, West Virginia, 11 hours later. Typically, it's a 6.5-hour drive, but I want the fans to know some of the things I go through for this show. I rented an electronic vehicle, an EV today. My first experience with one. I really loved it, but I did have some difficulty getting along with the technology. But I'm sitting here about a half a mile from the New River Gorge Bridge in the heart of God's country, in the heart of almost heaven, West Virginia, and blessed to be here with Phil Tissue and his wife, Nancy. Phil's a local lawyer here in Fayetteville. Phil's been a country lawyer practicing here for 70 years. Long-time friends.
I know both those folks.
It's good to be here with them. And it was such a trip today. I brought two of my friends with me also. First, my ever-present West Virginia water bottle. And the other friend I kept in the trunk the whole way up here. But once I arrived and finally got here, I brought. You'll recognize this name, won't you? Can you see that on the screen? That would be my friend and yours.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Ty Bullock. So Ty Bullock, if you folks get to Charleston, West Virginia, stop by Bullock's Distillery and taste some.
Good people.
Good people.
Yep. All right, Frank, I'm going to give you the honors if you want to introduce our guests. Y'all want to talk a little bit about last week first or first week last? Or y'all want
to? Yeah. Why don't we get that out of the way? Let me put this up here. Kelly has a statement. My fingers were too fast. Can't do fingers and talk at the same time.
County.
That's
right.
All
right, Kelly.
Yeah. Not far away.
Yes, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, that was we did the post-game show and we had a really good turnout, almost 1,500 people on the post-game show, and losing to Pitt, particularly the way we lost to it, just takes your breath away, and a lot of criticism this week. And so the question is, obviously, can we rebound? We'll know soon. Yeah. But as we'll see and talk about it later, Kansas is in the same suit. They lost their offensive coordinator to Penn State, Andy Kostelnicki, and the replacement who came from Baylor, I think his name is Grimes. There's a transition, and Jalen Daniels has just not looked the same. In fact, his stats, which we'll look at, are shocking compared to when we think of what he did last year, and then the big comeback in overtime the year before in Morgantown when KU came in and basically won the game, which was a really big surprise at that point because KU wasn't very good before that. But so we got to pivot, we got to turn around. There's a bye week after that, and then it gets even tougher because then we have to go to Stillwater and play Oklahoma State. But your thoughts, Greg, and then Mickey.
Yeah, you talk about Kansas and their quarterback. It's such a striking parallel between him and Garrett Green and the way they're playing. I watched a little bit of their game last week or week before last, and he just stayed in the pocket. He wasn't a threat to run at all. And, last year he ran all over the place and was hard to contain. And, you kind of see the same thing with Garrett Green now. It's almost like they've reined him in a little bit. And I guess out of fear of injury, I'm guessing, I don't know, but it's such an integral part of their offense. I really think they got to get back to that part of it, let him run a little bit and just be himself out there. And you don't want him to get injured, obviously, but you can't play scared. You got to play the game. I mean, injuries can happen no matter what. And, I just think that it's really limited our offense with him just going back and standing in the pocket all the time. And, after the Pitt game, it was just so disheartening because we really, in my mind, dominated the game in a lot of ways and just didn't hang on, score wise. And that's what's disheartening about it is, you're a better team. You had that game won and you just handed it to them on a silver platter. And, you got to get back to the drawing board and buckle down and realize we've got the Big 12 schedule in front of us. We got to get focused on that and we got to get going. So hopefully we will.
Mickey, your thoughts?
I just have one word about last week's performance: abysmal. I mean, just absolutely, from a coaching perspective and from a defensive secondary perspective. Those are the two key areas that we'll talk about later in this week's game as well. But I think that really, how you lose a game being up 10 with 4 minutes and 50 seconds to go is just, to me, that's on the coaches. I mean, we played so great in the third quarter up until the final 5 minutes of the game, and then just things fall apart. But that happens sometimes. You got to put it behind you. Last week was last week. It's a new week. It's a new team. You can't live in the past. We need to get to 2-2 entering the break week.
Yep. Yeah. No question about that. No question. Well, let's and we're going to see it as every week we look at the Pro Football Focus grading, and you can see where the issues are. We're used to seeing Garrett Green in the 70s and 80s, and against Penn State and against Pitt, he was in the 50s. And that's just not Garrett Green. Of course, he's playing against very good competition. No question about that. But that's an issue.
Yeah, I saw somebody ask the question, do you think the coaches are reining him in? And I can't help but believe that they are because, as a runner back there last year, his first instinct was to pull it and take off. I mean, he just a lot of times probably ran when he shouldn't have, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now this year, he's just absolutely almost has to be forced into running to run. And I don't think his game is going to change that much unless somebody is directing that. So I think they reined him in a little bit. I really do.
Well, we'll get Joe's take on this. Let's put this up, the profile. One of the best resumes, I think, ever in college and pro football. And Joe went back and forth, not only at a number of colleges, as I mentioned earlier, but also a variety of NFL, XFL, et cetera. He was even a GM. He's a West Virginia boy from Welch, played at Oceana High School, came to WVU, played end. If you take, I've seen photos of, there's one right there. There's a photo from the archives at WVU, number 85, playing at WVU. And then he coached at West Virginia under Bobby Bowden and then Frank Cignetti Jr. And one of the things I want to talk with him about, he left West Virginia for a year to go to Kansas State and then came right back and served as offensive coordinator in 76 and 77. You see a gap there. So we're going to ask him what happened there. Anyway, he also coached at Pitt. How about that? Michigan State, Alabama. And he'll talk about that, working with close friend Nick Saban as the offensive coordinator and as an advisor, and also K-State, as I mentioned. Look at the list of NFL coaching stops: Cleveland, Kansas City, Buffalo, Chicago, Carolina, Texas, and also what used to be called the Redskins from Washington. and other pro coaching, Philadelphia Stars, the Pittsburgh Maulers, GM of the Birmingham Iron, and he ended his career starting as O-line coach at the University of Alabama with Nick Saban, then became assistant head coach for a number of seasons, and then for the last almost a decade was a special advisor to Nick Saban, who arguably is the best head coach ever. So let's bring him in here. It's an honor, isn't it, Mickey,
yes,
to bring your friend in?
It really is.
There he is.
It really is. There's the man.
Well, thank you, guys. I'm looking forward to this.
Hey, glad to have you. This is awesome. We are so excited about this. And Frank, there in the introduction, I guess you could hear it, was talking about the little skip between West Virginia and Kansas State and then back all of a sudden. Yeah. And we'll just go ahead and hit you with it right now. What happened there? How'd that come about?
I was probably 26, 27 years old. And the guy who got the head coaching job at Kansas State, a guy named Ellis Rainsberger, who I had worked a camp with a couple of years before, he called and offered me the offensive coordinator's job. And at that time, I was coaching, I think, maybe tight ends, tackles, offensive line. I can't remember what I was coaching at West Virginia, but I couldn't turn down the offensive coordinator's job.
Absolutely.
And we won our first 3 games at Kansas State. Then we played Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and got half our team killed. Ooh. But then when Coach Bowden left, went to Florida State, and I went back to West Virginia with Frank for a couple of years as the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, there you go, Frank. Makes sense now, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Well, I know if people that are sports fans and WVU fans and all that follow you guys, and I know tons of people, when I told them who we had on the show, were very excited about it, and I wanted to tune in and watch tonight because they all know who you are and what you accomplished throughout your career, which was an amazing career, by the way. But we're going to start off with you in high school. Let's talk about your high school career. How it came about that you chose West Virginia, and then what it was like at West Virginia, a player and a coach.
Okay, first of all, I want to correct something. I'm not from Welch. I was born at the Welch Hospital. I grew up in Matheny, West Virginia, which is in Wyoming County outside of Oceana.
I know where it's at now. So I'll go ahead. Since you told me that, I was going to say this, and then I thought, no, I better not say that. When I worked for a congressman from West Virginia and Raleigh County, and part of our district was Welch was part of it. So we traveled down to Welch quite often, and he would tell the people on the phone he'd be talking to that he was traveling down to the bowels of West Virginia, and they'd say, "You going to Welch?" Like, yep, that's where I'm headed.
That was it. Yeah, I grew up in outside of Oceana, Matheny, West Virginia, and had a chance to play at Oceana High School. Matter of fact, I had rheumatic fever during my freshman year, so I couldn't play sports in my sophomore year. Huh. But I played as a junior and senior, both, and played football, basketball, and track, and had good coaches in all of it. John Beckelheimer was my football coach. Paul Greer, who you remember, Greg, I'm sure was my basketball coach. Sure. And we were successful. We had a run of good players. Yeah, we were successful in football. We'd win 8 or 9. But in basketball, my junior year, we got beat in the state tournament at Morgantown. My senior year, we were undefeated and won it all.
Yep.
So, and I had my high school basketball coach. There have been 2 coaches who influenced my coaching career. And I said, I love my football coach. But my high school basketball coach, Paul Greer, he taught me, and my 50 years of coaching, I used a lot of the things that he taught me and I learned. And then the other guy's Bobby Bowden, who I played for. He was the offensive coordinator when I played. Then I was a graduate assistant. Then he hired me. I was a head freshman coach. Then he moved me to receivers and moved me to offensive line. So he got me moved around, so I had a chance to learn a lot of different offensive positions. But those two guys were the biggest influence on my career. I couldn't have been around better people. I'll give you an example. Paul Greer, who was my coach, I'll never forget it. I used it forever. He taught me, he said, Joe, here's what you got to know. You got to know what to do. And this was in basketball. You got to know how to do it. And then when you're really there, you understand why you do it. And if you think about that, I used that in coaching for years. Coaching, no matter if I was coaching quarterbacks, wide receivers, offensive line, number one, know what to do. Mickey will tell you this, offensive lineman. What is your assignment? Who are you supposed to block? How do you do it? Get your second step on the ground, get your hands inside, play low to high, flat back. And then, why do I do it? I'm doing this. I'm putting my head here because the running back's going to here. Those things, and that's what I learned from Paul Greer and Bobby Bowden. Great teachers. I was very, very fortunate.
Oh, that's fantastic. He was good in that area down there, known for its basketball for years. The hotbed is what they call it of high school basketball in West Virginia. Had Oceana, Baileysville, all those folks down in there, Ballins. So yeah, some fantastic basketball come out of that. How did you end up from Oceana to WVU? How'd that all take place, and what was your experience like there?
It was kind of a little bit odd. I only played my junior year. I didn't play as a sophomore. So we had a pretty good year in football and basketball. And then my senior year, people started finding out, I guess, about Oceana and us. So I was actually more recruited by Duke. And my first visit, I went to Duke. And matter of fact, I signed a paper with them. Then West Virginia was in touch, but they didn't recruit me much until after the high school basketball tournament. Dick Ware was a receiver coach, and he had been a West Virginia coach in the Huntington area, and he was there, and he had seen some video, and that's when West Virginia started recruiting me. And of course, being from West Virginia, that's where I was going to go. And you talked about somebody taking a visit up to when we left. When I went to my visit, my dad and I and my high school coach went to West Virginia. It took us 7 hours from Oceana to drive to Morgantown.
Oh, boy.
But that was how I ended up there and enjoyed it. And as freshmen, at that time, you had freshman teams. You couldn't play varsity. So we had I played outside linebacker as a freshman. And then the coaching staff changes. That's when Jim Carlin came in, and Mickey knows this, and that staff, Jim Carlin came in. So that next spring, I was actually playing center. Can you believe that? I was 6'2", 210 pounds, and they were trying me at center and then at guard. And then right before the spring game, they moved me to tight end. And they'd had a guy, Larry Canterbury, who had been their starting tight end before. So I finished the spring and fall camp. I come back and end up winning the job. And our first game, I started tight end as a sophomore against Duke.
Wow.
Yeah. But then I ended up getting hurt and had an injury against Virginia Tech, and it ended my playing career. And that's when I started becoming a student assistant, graduate assistant. And then Coach Bowden hired me as freshman coach when he got the head coaching job.
Wow. A great story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate.
That's one of those situations where something bad happens, so something good can happen afterward. So that's pretty neat. You coached in college and in the pros.
Yeah.
And I know, people look at that and I even think today people wonder, what difference does the coach really make? Everybody wants to fire the coach every game they lose. That's the way it is here. Everybody wants to fire the coach. But as a coach, when you, say you run into some bad times, what's your philosophy? What do you preach to your players, about losing the big game or whatever, on both levels? Is it different on the pro level than it is on the college level?
No.
Same thing.
What happened yesterday is yesterday. Don't live in the past. take those rear view mirrors off. Look at that windshield. That is over. No matter good, and I'm going to tell you, I know West Virginia, the whole state feels bad about that right now, but you can't worry about that. You can't worry about what happened last week. You got to look forward. Tomorrow's coming. Yesterday's gone. So you can't worry about it. You got to get ready for this week. The only thing you can do is look at that video of that game and make some corrections. If you got to make personnel adjustments, you do that. But you go. Everything now is in front of you, and what's behind you is gone. You're never going to see yesterday again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the same in the NFL, Greg.
Yeah.
Same thing. There you play 16, 17 games. You're not going to win them all.
Right.
And one team, Miami Dolphins, did it. So you're going to lose some games there, but you got to forget about it and go.
Right. Talk about you coached at several colleges. We'll get to the pros here in just a minute, but you coached at several different colleges, universities, big time programs. Talk a little bit about those different programs and what the differences were back then when you were coaching them in all these different universities, because you coached at some pretty prominent places, and I'd like to hear what the differences were as far as your experience was concerned.
Well, my favorite was, of course, my first 5 years with Coach Bowden.
Yeah,
I loved working for him. I loved being around him. He had a great influence on my life. He was just outstanding. And then I told you about why I went to Kansas State for that year.
Right,
and came back. And the 2 years with Frank Cignetti there, we weren't as successful as we had been. But then Jackie Sherrill, and they had it going at Pitt, offered me an opportunity that I felt I had to take. And we had outstanding players there, too, at Pitt. And I got to coach Danny Marino. And then next year I coached the offensive line. I had Russ Graham and Mark May and all those guys. Then at that time, salaries weren't as high.
Yeah.
So Michigan State offered me the offensive coordinator's job at quite a bit more money. So my wife and I had 2 young kids, and so it was not a great move professionally, but financially it was.
Right.
So that was the college coach, and I enjoyed coaching at Michigan State. I enjoyed the people.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my college career until I had retired from the NFL, and I went with Nick to Alabama, and that was an unbelievable run.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and I know
6 national championships later.
Yeah. You picked up a lot of hardware over the years. So.
Yeah, we did.
For sure. I know a lot of our fans, of course, because he's from West Virginia too. We claim him, but a lot of our viewers would like to hear what was it like working with Nick Saban. I think since he's retired from coaching, I think people are really falling in love with him now because he's such, when he gets on the air, he's
Nick. My relationship with Nick was probably different than all the rest of the coaches. Is that we had been friends. We hired Nick at West Virginia University, so there, and my wife and I knew Nick and Terry, and I'd had a lot more experience in coaching than most of the coaches. So our relationship was good. But working with him, Nick was an outstanding football coach. He's very intelligent. He's very passionate. He's very technique driven. And he cares about his players. And as far as recruiting goes, they're none better.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at the number of guys in the NFL right now that we recruited down through the years there.
Oh, yeah. Unreal.
I mean, and not only did he get good players, they improved.
Yeah.
How many?
That's what he did. He got players better.
Yeah. Do you know, Mike is asking how many players were sent to the NFL from Saban? Time. It had to be a bunch.
I don't know that number, but I just heard there was something about the players in the NFL from Alabama now, their salaries this past year was over $1 billion. Is that what it was? There was something like that. It was high.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
It's got to be over 3 digits. It's got to be more than 3 digits, don't you think?
Guarantee you. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
It's got to be 100 plus.
You just Mickey, you just turn the TV on. Like the other night, Philadelphia was playing. They got beat, but Jalen Hurts is throwing to Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
And the left guard played at Alabama. I mean, so you just see that so many times, and they got good players, and the best thing is those players got better and better.
Yeah. And, you could always tell a difference when you watched Alabama play and you watched their team. They were so disciplined and so well coordinated. I mean, it's just they rarely made mistakes that beat them, and that's why they won all the time. And physically, they were better than most people too. But you could really tell the difference in the discipline and the type of systems that they run and that sort of thing when you watch them play, when you watch these teams play. And that's something I always was impressed by.
Yeah, our first year we went down there, we were 7-6.
Yeah.
In 2007, and we were getting the culture the way Nick wanted it, and getting the discipline that it takes, and getting the recruiting. And then the next year we're 12-0.
Yeah.
And get beat by Florida in the SEC championship game, and the next year we're 12-0, and we beat Florida in the SEC championship game, beat Texas in the national championship game. So Nick got the culture was established. Right.
Yeah. And you could definitely tell that, no question about it. We were talking about getting back on track after a bad loss. This past weekend with West Virginia. I'm sure you watched that. We'd like to get your take on that and what you saw and what you think they need to do to get back on track.
Well, you know what? I heard you all talking about a quarterback having to do more like he's done in the past, getting out of the pocket and making the plays. I don't know why, but there's one play in that game that to me was huge. That was that holding call on who is it, Milam?
Milam, yep.
Yeah.
I don't know from when they replayed it whether it was holding or not, but that one play.
Yep.
And there's a lot of times in a game where that happens. That one play, because that was a big play.
Yes, sir.
And that stopped the momentum or changed the momentum of the game. And I agree with what you guys have said. The secondary has to play better. How do you do that? Well, you got to get more pressure on the quarterback. That helps the secondary more than anything.
Yeah.
Get more pressure on the quarterback with your pass rush. And then when that quarterback has to pull it down and run, then you've got to make the play on him. But the secondary has to play better. There's no doubt about that. And I see you've just got the stats up there.
Yeah, it's the grades that Frank checks out, the Pro Football Focus, and that shows their grades in their different positions. And it's when you look at it this way, it's you see some things really stand out to you that were not very good. So you know what you got to do to get better when you see this.
Yeah, it's right there in front of you.
Yep, that team passing offense, 47 isn't going to get it done. And it's the quarterback, because you can see the pass routes are 69. Yeah. And that's a pretty good differential. And then that lowest offensive player, who would have predicted that the lowest offensive grade from PFF was quarterback Garrett Green at 57.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just and yet the offensive line, and going back to what Joe said, Milam graded well, 70. Nick Malone, 78. Rodney Gallagher had a good game on offense. Justin Robinson, 71. And TJ Jackson, God bless him, he came for a lot of people out of nowhere and did an excellent job. Yeah. Got the highest defensive player. I don't know about you guys. I am shocked at Ben Cutter, middle linebacker, 48. That last line there, the defensive players, with Cutter at 48, Fagan at 49, Redward at 56, Mulbaugh at 59. Garnes 60. You grade out like that, and this is not a criticism. We talked about this last week. This is a critique. You're not going to win many Big 12 games or any games against really good competition.
Yeah.
No, and those are when you look at this, from this perspective, it's very important positions too. You see, that your quarterback is lowest grade, your running backs on there is a low grade. Same way on defense, your defensive backs, your linebackers. Those are important spots, and those a lot of those problems are visible. I mean, you can actually see them, with our cornerback play and that sort of thing. Because, actually we got pretty good pressure on the quarterback this week. We just didn't get to him every time. I think we sacked him 5 times. Probably should have sacked him 10 or 11 times. Yeah. They got to get better at that and get a hold of him. They can't let him run wild like he did in the fourth quarter there. It just killed us.
Yeah. The kid that played quarterback for Pitt, of course, I knew him because he had been at Alabama. He was going to be the 3rd down there this year, and he was a very smart kid and did not have great running skills, but he kind of could anticipate things, and I kind of saw that in his play the other day.
Yeah.
But there, that one, what was the 3rd quarter? He couldn't do anything.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, I think they had 11 yards in the 3rd quarter. I think what I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, we dominated in that quarter, and that's a game you should win when you dominate like that for a whole quarter.
Yeah,
and really for part of the 4th quarter as well, down about 5 or 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, Joe, I was going to say, Joe, you talked about that holding call. By the way, Kelly and I were talking about this week offline, and I did some research. Those were Big 12 referees. I have never seen them before, but that was a big call. Another big play was when they had 2 holding penalties in a row. It's 1st and 30, and they make the first down. You just can't have that.
Neil Brown, he mentioned that holding call in his press conference, and he wasn't real happy about it. And it didn't really look like holding. I mean, it was if it was holding, it wasn't very much. You see a lot worse, I guess.
There's a lot of games, Greg, where you can go back and you can take 2 or 3 plays out of the game.
Oh yeah,
and they are monumental.
Yep.
But and as a coach and as a player both, you never know when they are.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know which play is going to be that play. One time when I was coaching the Philadelphia Stars, I was running the offense there in the USFL back in '83, and George Allen was coaching Chicago Blitz. We're playing in the first playoff game. They're ahead of us 38-14 with 10 minutes to go. We win the game 45-38.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been on the other side of those.
Oh yeah.
I'm coaching the Cleveland Browns. We're playing Denver Broncos for the AFC Championship game to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh,
2 years in a row.
Don't bring it up.
We're ahead in both of them.
I've always been an avid Browns fan, and I remember those things too.
I've been there.
Golly, I told my wife one time. I was talking to my brother, and I told my wife, I said, a Cleveland Brown fan, we start talking, and you mention Red Right 88 or the drive or the fumble. And I said, it makes all Browns fans start crying. That's the way I am every time I hear those things.
I was there for both.
I know. I remember.
And I was at Buffalo when we had the Music City Miracle against us.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We had just gone down to kick a field goal to go ahead, 16 seconds left. We kick off. They come back here and throw the lateral pass forward. Still,
forward. I was getting ready to say about half of them were forward.
And they beat us. No time on the clock. So I've been there on both sides of it.
Yeah. You mentioned those plays. Frank mentioned one where it was 1st and 30. They had 2 consecutive holds and they're able to pick it up. They also had a 2nd and 20 and a 2nd and 29 where we got a defensive holding called on us in the second. And so those all were huge plays. And but the holding on Milam on the touchdown, that was really huge. So yeah, I'm sure you could go back, and of course Narduzzi, he got fined for complaining about the officiating. So he felt like it was the other way. So, who really knows?
I tell you what, I think the offensive line coach up at West Virginia does a good job. Mm-hmm. Watching those guys play.
Yeah.
They play with good technique. They play with good footwork, hand placement, pass things off in the pass protection. They do a nice job.
Yep.
You know, Joe, having played the offensive line myself, I couldn't agree with you more. That offensive line coach has just done a tremendous job up there. And look what he's produced, you know, with Zach Frazier, you know, starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers now. And now we got Matt Wylam, and he's produced some great talent there. He is a great offensive line coach.
Yeah.
I had a couple questions about that. Greg, I don't know if this is the appropriate time for me to pose these to Joe, or if you want to wait a little bit.
You go right ahead.
Well, Joe, it's good to see you again, first of all. Last time I ran into you, we shared a meal at the Outback Steakhouse in Beckley, West Virginia, about 5 years ago. Just happened to run into each other. And I don't think I had seen you for 30 years before that, something like that. Been a while. And I was trying to recall, and I really can't, given my age. You were 3 or 4 years ahead of the '69 Peach Bowl team class.
I went there in '65, but I couldn't play because I'd gotten hurt as a sophomore.
So what was your last year?
Of '69. It would have been 68.
68, right?
But I was a student assistant then, and actually I was a gopher. That's what I did. Wash cars for the coaches and do this and do that. And then my graduate assistant helped with the freshman team. But I was around as a student when you guys were there. Student assistant.
That's what I was thinking. You were like a student
assistant,
advisor, as I recall, right?
Well, the head graduate assistants, I was a student assistant. Like when Jim Carlin had his television show on Sunday morning, I had to take the video to Wheeling or to Charleston. That was what I did. I mean, I was a gopher. I was a gopher.
Hey, I wanted to go back to your high school days for just a moment here at Oceana. You know, I played at Mount Hope. Yeah. We were AA. We played for the state championship in 65 and 66. We lost both years. Once to Sarita Canova, just beat the pants off of us. And our senior year at New Martinsville, was Oceana AA?
Yeah,
is that right? When you played there,
we were AA, but we didn't make the state. I think we were my sophomore year. My junior year, I think we were 7-3, and my senior year we were 8-2 or something. But we didn't make the playoffs at that time. The playoffs they were a little different.
You only got 4 teams.
Right. Yeah, they were. The only reason we got there both years, I think we played more AAA teams than we did AA teams. Yeah. And that got you extra points toward getting into the state playoff championship. Being from that area, you know, I played with Dickie Roberts and Randy Flincham. Do you remember those two guys? And what's your
Dickie Roberts?
Do you have any opinions on those two guys?
Fletcham was a character now. He was a character. And Dickie was a really good player.
Oh, yeah.
He was a really good player. And
Dickie was so hard-nosed, hard-nosed.
And I knew his older brother, Don, who went had played at Welsh before him. And both of them were really good players. Danny Smith was with those guys. You know,
and of course, Bob Gresham came out of that area. He went to war.
Oscar Patrick, Randy Flincham played at Big Creek. Yeah, there were some. Yeah, there were some players in that crew. They came in with you.
What's the high school today that Oceana used to be? I know they consolidated, but what are they known as today?
It's Wyoming West. Yeah,
Wyoming West.
Yeah.
No, it's West Side.
Okay.
West Side.
Yeah.
West Side.
Yeah.
And then the other side is Wyoming East.
Yeah. Pineville and Mullins made Wyoming East.
Yep.
And Oceana and Bailey'sville
West
made,
Side.
Okay.
made West Side. Yeah.
Yep.
And I wanted to go back just for a moment on the comments that you made. I took some notes while you're talking, Joe, about the importance of a high school coach and the impact they have, not only on your football career, but really on your life.
No doubt.
As well. And I really appreciated the respect and the acknowledgement you gave your high school coach. You know, I played for a guy that was pretty famous in high school days in southern West Virginia by the name of Gene Spadaro.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you knew the Spadaro family or not.
No.
Gene was our high school football coach. Teddy Spadaro was his younger brother, who was the coach at Princeton for 30-some years. And Teddy actually made small school. It used to be called Small College All-American. He was a heck of a player. And I played with a guy named Jack Spadaros. But the Spadaros were renowned in southern West Virginia for their coaching and their playing ability. And I tell you, to this day, I can still remember some quips that Gene Spadaro gave me as our head coach of the football. Has helped me not only in my football career, but in later life as well. So I really appreciated the points that you had to make about the importance of your high school football coach. And then moving on to the college level, was Jack Fligg still there when you were coaching, or did he leave with Carlin to go to Texas Tech?
He left. He went with Coach Carlin to Texas Tech. Yeah, Jack left, and then they went to South Carolina together when he left Texas Tech. And but Coach Flick was really a good guy, boy.
He was a great guy. Let me tell you, and I wanted to just touch on briefly the other point you made about the mental aspect of the game.
Yeah. And
being prepared mentally to play. I mean, Coach Fligg was just, and he coached at a number of places too. When he left to go to Texas Tech, he then went to University of Kentucky, and he was at UK for a while. And he coached under Bear Bryant at Alabama for a while.
No, he wasn't with Bear. He was with.
He was at Ray Perkins, wasn't it?
No, it
was it Ray Perkins?
The next guy who went to Kentucky. Who'd come from Georgia
after
Tech.
Ray Perkins.
Yeah.
So
Jack.
He was a center.
Who
was it?
I can't remember.
He played center for the Colts, didn't he?
Frank, we'll have to depend on you for that. You're the statistician on the group here.
Matter of fact, Tommy Bowden was on that staff with Jack Fligg at Alabama at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Jack was just – I had so much respect for Coach Fligg, and he stressed the mental aspect of the game so much. I'll tell you, Joe, 3 nights a week after practice, he would pull a pop quiz on us, and he would bring out the offensive scheme for the upcoming week, and we would have to complete the duties not only of the offensive line, but what were the assignments for the running backs and the quarterback and the halfback, and even on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. He was a stickler for. As a matter of fact, he had a phrase. You remember Bob Podbesic?
Oh, Pod was in my class.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. Well, Pod and I have remained friends until today. You know, he was he got a degree in pharmacy.
Yeah.
And he was a pharmacist in Charleston for years and years and years. He's retired there now.
Yeah.
But Pod and I continue to joke about this. Coach Fligg used to always say, men, when you go out there on the field, if you get beat physically, I can understand it, but do not embarrass yourself mentally by forgetting your assignment or doing the wrong assignment. So your points were well taken about those. And I just want to mention a couple of other players that you may or may not have known. They were ahead of me, and I think they may have been ahead of you. It was kind of the crew that when Jim Carlin came in, a lot of these guys he kicked out of the program.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember? Joe Tafoni went on to play for the Cleveland Browns, I think, right?
Yeah. He was a senior. He was a senior. Dick Leftridge, those guys. They were seniors when I was a freshman.
They were all seniors. They were graduating, right?
We were the Mets meet for those guys on the scout team. Roger Alford was a pulling guard. All those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you remember the guy?
Mickey, before you go any further, I wanted to tell you, I didn't know if you knew it or not, but in years at Mount Hope, when I was the basketball coach over there, and that was, 97 to about 2002, somewhere, 7 years, somewhere in that range. Gene Spadero was my assistant coach the whole time I was over there.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep, got to be real close with Gene. He was something else.
Wow.
He was something else. He would always.
Well, Gene.
We would practice.
What a guy.
We got done with practice.
I think he's passed away from cancer now, hasn't he?
Yes, he did pass away a few years ago. Yep.
A couple of years ago, yeah. Yep. He coached me. I threw the shot put and the discus on track, and he was my coach on that as well as my football coach. A couple other names I want to throw at you, Joe, see if you remember these guys. Dutch Schultz.
Yeah, Dutch. Yeah, he was a senior too. Yeah,
and
Dutch, Dutch was one of the only guys that had a car. He had a little old MG of some kind he drove around. He was one of the only few guys who had a car there on campus.
Okay. Hey, Mark Parsons just chipped in there with the name of that coach at University of Kentucky. It was Bill Curry.
Bill Curry. Yeah, that's who Bill. And that's how Jack ended up at Kentucky, too.
Thank you very much, Mark Parsons, for that.
Thanks, Mark.
And lastly, there was a guy there. I think he was a senior when I was a freshman, Joe. I only knew him as the General. They called him the General because he had been in Vietnam and came back and got a scholarship when he was like 25, 26 years old. Do you remember that guy?
I'm trying to think who that was.
Lieutenant Dan, what I heard.
Well,
I can't.
The only thing I remember about the guy is he would, when you're a freshman in college, your parents always send you these care packages with cookies and home-baked goods.
Yeah.
The General would literally break down your dormitory door, come in and take away your care package from home. And he'd turn around. I'll never forget this. He'd turn around as the very last thing out the door and said, "What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah. You know what?
Of course, as a freshman, you weren't going to do anything. That's all I got.
To interrupt you there, Mick, you're talking about playing offensive line. I had the good fortune of, I played tight end in college, but I had the good fortune in all my coaching careers. I coached every offensive position, always on offense. I was offensive coordinator in the NFL for 10, 12, 13 years and coached them all. My favorite position to coach was the offensive line.
Oh yeah.
That's when I went with Nick to Alabama. That's what I got to coach.
You were offensive line coach when you first went there, weren't you? I remember that.
My last 3 or 4 years in the NFL, I'd been offensive coordinator, and then we started hiring position coaches. I always coached quarterbacks and run the offense. Then they started hiring a quarterback coach, and I was the walk-around coordinator. I didn't like it, so I went back to coaching offensive line. Then I coached it again for Nick at Alabama. My favorite position to coach, no doubt, was the offensive line.
That's cool.
Well, of course, I'm a little prejudiced having played on the offensive line, but I really think that's where the game is either won or lost, in the trenches.
Well,
as the saying goes.
There's a lot of things have changed in the last 50-some years. You got the spread offenses. You've had wishbone. You've had single wing. You've had T formation. You've had split back veer. I'm going to tell you something's never changed. You got to put your hand in the ground. You got to play low and high, and you got to put your head in the right place and knock the guy off the ball. And that guy on the other side playing defensive line, it has not changed for him either. It doesn't matter where they line up all these receivers, where all these guys are, that part of it has not changed. And Mike Dunlap knows that too.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Mike.
Hey, hi, Joe.
Well, I got
How you doing, Mike?
2 more quick points. Let me get in 2 more quick points, and then I'll shut up. Do you play golf, Joe?
I just played 9 holes today.
Well, I brought my clubs with me, and we're only about 20 miles apart. I'm here through Saturday night, so I'll be calling you.
Okay.
We need to get out and hit them before I head back south next week. And the last point I was going to make to your point about coaching the offensive line hasn't changed that much. I'll tell you a quick story here about one of the things that Coach Flegg coached me on when we played Penn State my junior year. They had 2 All-American defensive tackles. One of them was named Mike Reed, that went on to play for the Cincinnati Bengals and was also a concert pianist. You probably know of him.
Yeah.
And the other defensive tackle's name was Steve Smear. What a great name for a defensive tackle, huh?
Yeah.
But anyway, when Coach Flegg was coaching me, he said, look, when you're lined up against Mike Reed, Mickey, he said, he's an All-American defensive tackle. He said, here's what I want you to do. On the pass, when he pass rushes, when we're throwing the ball, he said, you have got to keep him on your outside shoulder. Do not let him get to your inside shoulder, because if he gets to your inside shoulder, he's going to get to the quarterback. I said, okay, Coach, I got it. He said, but if he does get to your inside shoulder, he said, I want you to fall down. I said, fall down? He said, yeah, I want you to fall down. And he said, and when you fall down, Mickey, he said, I want to make sure that you fall down face up. I said, why face up, Coach Flegg? He said, well, I'm hoping maybe he'll get his cleats caught in your face mask.
Yeah.
True story. True story.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, in the 15 minutes or so we have left, let's shift back to the KU game.
Okay.
And we got our keys to the game coming up, and
we
also have those stats we talked about earlier that we want to take a look at. But one of the first things, keeping this then and now, you know this, having coached at K-State, Joe, is that sometimes schools are either football schools or basketball schools. West Virginia is lucky to be both. But I think it's fair to say that over the years, KU has been a basketball school. If you look at this, University of Kansas has a terrible football history. They've lost 110 games more than they've won. They've had a few good years. And I was talking to someone the other day, and he was making the point that we tend to think about teams in terms of what's happening currently. But if you look back over the last 25 years, what has happened to KU is mostly difficult years. If you add up all those bad seasons in that third bullet there, 2 no-win seasons since 15, 2 one-win seasons since 12, 3 2-win seasons since 11, and 5 3-win seasons since 10. They've had not very good seasons. And even though we really think, and we don't know, Lance Leopold is a great coach, he has a losing record. And so I wonder how things are playing out in Lawrence. We know how things are playing out in Morgantown with the concern with West Virginia. Neil Brown has a winning record. Lance Leopold does not. And he's in charge of a program that has not been very successful. And then here are the team comparisons through the first 3 weeks of the season. And I put Jalen Daniels in red. I don't know what you guys think, but it's inconceivable those numbers are the way they are. I mean, 39 for 71, under 60%, only 400 yards, 4.5, 450 in 3 games, and he has twice as many interceptions as touchdowns. He may be hurt. I don't know. And if you look at the West Virginia stats, our rushing attack combined, Donaldson and White, about the same as the two guys. And by the way, that's a mistake. That was the mistake, Mickey, that you caught earlier today. That heading should be KU, not Pitt. So at any rate, they're 438 yards. The receivers, again, either team, nothing to speak of. They've got some good tacklers in Wheeler, Brown, and Dodson. We got to look at those guys. 43 solos out of 52 tackles. These are not two teams that are leading the NCAA in their stats. The only thing that stands out, and I've got it in green there, is the total defense. They rank KU ranks 18th nationally. So I don't know. I mean, those stats to me read woe is me for both teams.
Yep. Yeah, and you wonder coming into this matchup, I mean, which team can get it shifted in the right direction? And I think, I really think West Virginia, they're really close. I mean, you watch them and they can be so good at times. Then other times they let you down, but it seems like they're really, really close to being pretty good. I know it sounds crazy, but they're close to being good. And I just think it all depends on Garrett Green and, his ability to get out of the pocket and scramble, throw it on the run, that sort of thing. If he can do that and get better at that, I think that's going to, change the whole outcome for WVU. Defensively, again, too, if we can keep getting pressure on the quarterback, it's got to help our defensive backs a little bit. Our linebackers getting in the right positions. I think they did a better job Saturday. Still some issues there, though. But yeah, when you look at those comparisons, looks like two teams, in the same knapsack here.
And West Virginia's played two of the three pretty good teams.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think when I watched the Penn State game, they're a good football team.
Yes.
And Pitt is at times.
Right.
And I'm not as up on KU. Who have they played? Who are the three teams they've played?
They played UNLV. They lost UNLV.
They lost to UNLV.
Yeah.
Let me look it up. Easy to look up here.
Because sometimes stats like if you play against Penn State,
your
stats aren't going to be very good.
Right.
Now, you hope theirs aren't when you're playing against them, because they've got good defense.
Mm-hmm.
And Pitt and West Virginia to me were very close.
Yeah.
That as it went during the game.
Yep, they opened up against Lindenwood, which that's not even a group of five. That's the same as Duquesne that we played in Albany. They won that 48-3. They lost to Illinois. I remember us talking about that. They lost to Illinois at Illinois. They lost to UNLV. So Illinois is a good team. They good showed that again. This weekend. But and UNLV's. This may be the best UNLV team that there's been in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. Yeah. Well, let's go on to our keys of the game. We do that every week, and we want you to add to this too, Joe. Keys to the Kansas game with game predictions. Mickey, I'll turn to you first.
Yeah, well, I've got West Virginia winning by 1 point, 31-30. We clearly had the ability to score on offense, but I'm very concerned defensively, particularly in the secondary. I mean, I think we are so weak in the secondary. And they're playing what's his name, Gallagher, both ways. That's offense and defense. I'm not sure that's a really wise decision at this point. So, the play of the defensive secondary is going to be critical. As Joe mentioned, you got to have a pass rush for the secondary to play well. And my concern is I don't think our big defensive end, the kid from where'd he come from, New Zealand or somewhere? I've forgotten his name for the moment. He's still out with an injury, right?
That's right.
Wisterian or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so, with little or no pass rush, and if the defensive secondary, if the QB on the other side's got 5, 6, 7 seconds, they're going to beat the secondary. I mean, you got to hold it under 4 seconds or so, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondarily, I really don't think Garrett Green's play is going to have that much of an impact on the game because I think he's going to come out and do his thing. Certainly, they have limited him in keeping him in the pocket instead of breaking loose. But, I've always been a huge proponent of Neil Brown. However, after last Saturday's game, when we were up by 10 with 4 minutes and 50 seconds to go, and his play calling as the offensive coordinator, I guess he's filling that role as well as head coach, which I disagree with also. But, he calls 2 running plays up the middle, and now it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and he's going to call a pass, which everybody on TV and everybody on Pitt's defense knew. So they knock it down, and we got to punt the ball away to them. So, then the secondary doesn't play well on the next possession, and they get a quick 7. And then they come back, get the ball back again, and they score again. So, I mean, you just can't blow a game like that with a 10-point lead with 4 minutes and 50 seconds. And to me, that's 70% coaching, 30% the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Greg?
Well, I think that we got to contain Daniels. I know he hasn't been running a lot. I don't know if he's hurt or if that's by design, but we got to keep him in the pocket and put some pressure on him. I thought our defensive line, they played pretty well and put pressure on Pitt quarterback for most of the game, except when down to the nitty gritty when we really needed them to. So our defensive line's got to step up and put some pressure on him and then keep him contained when he does come out to run. Garrett Green, I think, unlike Mickey, I think Garrett Green's an important part of this game. I think he's got to lift his game up a little bit and use the weapons that he has, which the 2 weapons are his legs. And he's got to use those legs and get outside the pocket, at least give them the threat of the run coming. And I think that will open up the receivers a little bit better for him. But he's got to at least make that effort to make it look like it's a threat for him to run, even if he don't run. But I think he needs to get out and run the ball more for sure. And then our secondary, they got to play better. And I think our defensive line's playing better. Secondary's got to step up, play a little bit better themselves. And I think that's the key. I think West Virginia will win it. I got 41-35 with Kansas scoring a late touchdown.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I thought of was that third quarter. Well, Kansas was -2 total yards. I mean, I know you can't play that way or those results or that result for every quarter, but I'd like to see West Virginia play much more like the third quarter than they have. That was the best quarter yet of the 3 games. And they need to use more imagination on offense. We talked last week about Nico and Garrett into the game at the same time. I don't think we're even close to optimizing that offensive talent. And again, it's who am I to say that? But I just like to see them be more imaginative. And Green needs to run more and be more creative. And special teams remains an issue. Never should have had that blocked punt, which gave them life, and that was the only score in the third quarter. And we're still having trouble. Michael's still having trouble kicking the ball into the end zone. We've talked about this endlessly, that WVU is not very good in terms of touchbacks, which is so critical. In fact, last week, a couple of times the ball was kicked out of bounds. And so we just can't have that. And so part of this is fixable, correctable, mental more than anything else, strategic. But a lot of it also is just going out and seizing the day. Got Mark Parsons here. Yeah, I'm afraid Kansas will pick apart our secondary. It'll be another close one. Close one. Any rate, your thoughts, Joe?
Well, when you have two teams that looking at these stats, they're very similar. And rather than anything, what I found to be true down through the years, what influences games more than anything else, 2 points. Number one is turnovers. Number two are big plays. Don't turn the ball over. You got a very much higher percentage chance to win the game. Make big plays, eliminate big plays. And that's what got West Virginia last week. Didn't eliminate the big plays. But if you take those 2 points, any game you watch, especially when you look at these stats that you showed there, Frank, how close they are in most categories, whoever does those two things will win this game. No turnovers and eliminate big plays. That's the key, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sounds like that sounds like good keys coming from a coach.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think that's probably stood the test of time. Greg.
Oh yeah, I think you're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right. And I think, like I said, I think West Virginia is on the verge of being pretty good. I just think they're close. You know, it's got to get a few things ironed out, a couple things ironed out, and I think they'll be all right. Tell you what, Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you tonight. We have enjoyed this so much. And I know Frank and Mickey and I don't know what happened to Mike. He disappeared on us, but I'm sure all of us enjoyed it equally as much. And we appreciate you taking some time to spend with us.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed it.
And hopefully we can call you back again sometime.
Yeah.
Let's
get them ears going now.
There you go. That sounds like a great plan. Thank you very much, Coach. We appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's Joe Pendry, everybody, in case you're wondering. And, man, what a career. My goodness. He's coached it all, hasn't he? And with some high-level people. And I remember, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I remember very well when he was in Cleveland. Absolutely. I remember a great offense.
Well, I do too.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when he was in Buffalo more so as the offense. I think that's when who was the QB there? They lost 4 Super Bowls.
Joe Ferguson.
No, I think it was afterwards. No, Kelly.
Jim Kelly.
Yeah, it was Kelly.
Yeah, Jim Kelly. Our viewers enjoyed that. And we enjoyed it as well. We love talking to these guys, and another fantastic show. So we're going to tell everybody, make sure you like and subscribe us on YouTube. Make sure you tune in to the post-game show on Saturday, 15 minutes after the game. And make sure you put your phones on silence when you come on. All right.
That's Mickey calling me.
Let's get off here before Mickey does get us canceled. Good night, everybody.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.